The text message stared back at me from my phone screen. "You're banned from Thanksgiving, idiot," my mother wrote in all caps, followed by a laughing emoji. Through that small digital window, I could almost hear them laughing at my expense. The family group chat quickly filled with messages supporting my exclusion. My chest tightened, but instead of pleading, I simply typed, "Okay," and set my phone down. They wanted me gone. Fine. I would make my own plans. What they didn't expect was how swiftly their perfect holiday feast would unravel when the bills went unpaid, or how soon my phone would light up with 25 missed calls from the same people who had mocked me. I'm Ellen Sullivan, 32 years old, and a senior accountant at Riverdale Financial. I've always been the responsible one in our family, a role I didn't choose, but one I was forced into by circumstances. Growing up in our chaotic household in Mapleton, my childhood was spent managing responsibilities that should never have fallen to me. My parents, Judy and Frank Sullivan, were never good with money. Dad would splurge on fishing gear when the electricity bill was due. Mom would buy designer purses when the refrigerator was empty. By age 11, I was sorting the mail to pull out bills marked final notice and using my babysitting money to buy groceries. While my friends went to summer camp, I stayed home counting pennies and making payment arrangements with utility companies, using my best adult voice. "Ellen will figure it out," became the family motto. Whenever financial disaster loomed, and it always did, I somehow made it work. I put myself through state college by working 2 jobs, graduated with honors, and secured a stable position that finally gave me financial security. The pattern continued into adulthood. When my younger brother Cody's car broke down, he called me. When Mom needed dental work not covered by insurance, she called me. Ellen would make it happen. Dad lost another job, and Ellen would cover the mortgage until he found something new. I became the family bank, the emergency fund, the safety net. For years, I accepted this role, believing that supporting family was just what responsible people did. But things changed last summer when Cody, now 27, got his 3rd DUI. "He needs $13,000 for bail and lawyer fees," Mom told me over the phone, as if reading me a grocery list. "No," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "Not this time." The silence on the other end was deafening. "What do you mean, no?" Mom finally asked. "I mean, I won't bail him out again. He needs to face consequences." That was the beginning of the frost. Mom became increasingly cold during our weekly calls. Dad stopped asking about my life altogether. My sister Amber, who had always been Mom's favorite, took every opportunity to remind me how heartless I was being. "Some of us actually care about family," she told me during a particularly tense Sunday dinner at my parents' house. Amber had never contributed a dime to family emergencies, but she excelled at emotional support, which somehow counted more than my years of financial sacrifice. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I suggested family therapy to address our issues. We gathered in my parents' cluttered living room, the same room where I had once stayed up late as a teenager, calculating how to stretch Dad's paycheck until the end of the month. "I feel taken advantage of," I admitted, hands shaking slightly. "I want to help, but there need to be boundaries." The meeting ended with Mom calling me stuck up and Dad accusing me of thinking I was better than everyone. Cody stormed out, and Amber gave me that pitying look she had perfected over the years. The next day, scrolling through Instagram, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Amber had posted photos of a fancy restaurant called the Harvest Table with the caption, "Booked for Thanksgiving. Going to be the best holiday ever with the fam." There were 27 likes and comments from my parents and various relatives, all expressing excitement. No one had mentioned Thanksgiving plans to me. No one had invited me. I scrolled through the comments and saw one from my mother that knocked the wind from me. "Can't wait. So nice to celebrate without any drama this year." I was the drama they were avoiding. After years of supporting them, I had been cut out of the family holiday because I finally said no. On the morning of November 15th, exactly 1 week before Thanksgiving, my phone pinged with a message that would change everything. Mom had finally made it official with her text. "You're banned from Thanksgiving, idiot." I stared at the screen, unable to process the casual cruelty. Before I could respond, more messages flooded the family group chat. Amber, finally, a holiday without Miss Perfect watching every bite we take. Cody, maybe we can actually enjoy ourselves without Ellen's judgmental looks. Dad, let's just focus on having a good time. Everyone. No one defended me. No one suggested this was going too far. With shaking fingers, I called my mother, hoping there was some explanation, some misunderstanding. "Ellen," she answered, her voice dripping with exasperation. "What is it now?" "Mom, I just saw the group chat. Are you seriously banning me from Thanksgiving?" "Oh, don't be so dramatic. We just thought it would be better this way. You obviously don't approve of our choices and we want to enjoy ourselves without feeling judged." "When have I ever judged you at Thanksgiving?" My voice cracked. "I've hosted it at my apartment for the past 3 years and paid for everything." "See? That's exactly it. You always have to remind us that you're the one paying. We're tired of feeling like charity cases." The hypocrisy was stunning. "So you don't want me to pay? But you're angry that I wouldn't pay for Cody's DUI." "That's different," Mom snapped. "That was family helping family. Your Thanksgiving hosting always felt like you showing off." The conversation spiraled from there, with Mom eventually revealing what I had suspected for years, but never wanted to believe. "You think we don't know? You look down on us with your fancy job and your nice apartment. You help us out just so you can feel superior." "That's not true," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I helped because I love you. If you loved us, you wouldn't have conditions. You wouldn't keep score." After we hung up, I collapsed on my couch, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My phone kept buzzing with group chat notifications. Curious, despite my better judgment, I looked again. To my surprise, my Aunt Tracy had chimed in. "Aren't you all being a bit harsh on Ellen? She's done a lot for this family." Mom's reply was swift. "Stay out of this." "Tracy, you don't know the whole story." Several relatives piled on, some supporting the decision to exclude me, others questioning it. The family was dividing into camps over my banishment. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. The room spun. I was having a full-blown panic attack, something I hadn't experienced since college when I was working 30-hour weeks while maintaining a full course load. I called the only person I trusted completely, my best friend Megan, who arrived at my apartment 20 minutes later with ice cream and wine. "I knew your family was selfish, but this is a whole new level," she said, after I showed her the messages. "Maybe they're right," I said, wiping my eyes. "Maybe I do act superior." "Ellen, stop. You've been their ATM for years. The one time you establish a boundary, they banish you." "That's not normal," Megan hesitated. "And there's something you should know. They've been bad-mouthing you to the extended family for years." "What? How do you know that?" "Remember I met your cousin Lindsay at your birthday party last year? We kept in touch. She told me, 'Your mother and Amber are always telling relatives that you think you're too good for them, that you only help out to lord it over everyone.'" The betrayal cut deep. While I had been defending my family to friends who questioned why I gave so much, they had been painting me as a villain. As Megan and I talked, a notification from my bank appeared on my phone. A charge for $3,000 at the harvest table was pending approval due to unusual activity. What the hell? I opened my banking app. I never authorized this. I called the restaurant and discovered the devastating truth. Someone had used my credit card to place a deposit for a Thanksgiving dinner for 15 people in my mother's name. The reservation had been made 3 weeks ago. The manager informed me that the remaining balance of $4,500 was due on the day of the event. They had banned me from a Thanksgiving they were planning to make me pay for. My hands trembled as I hung up the phone. The depth of their deception was staggering. "They stole your credit card information?" Megan was incredulous. "That's actual fraud, Ellen. It's a crime." Reality crashed down on me. This wasn't just a family squabble. It was theft. I immediately called my bank to cancel the cards and report the fraud. The representative on the phone was sympathetic but firm. "Would you like to press charges, Miss Sullivan?" The question hung in the air. These were my parents, my siblings. Despite everything, could I really involve the police? "Let me think about it," I said finally. "But please make sure no more charges go through." After hanging up, I called my friend Jess, who happened to be a lawyer specializing in family law. "I hate to say this," she told me after I explained the situation, "but you need to protect yourself. This likely isn't the first time they've taken advantage of you financially." She was right. There had been other suspicious charges over the years that I had dismissed. A vacation package I didn't remember approving, online shopping deliveries to my parents' address that I never questioned. I had been so determined to see the best in my family that I had ignored the evidence right in front of me. Jess helped me draft a clear, firm email to my family outlining that I was aware of the unauthorized use of my credit card, that all cards had been canceled, and that any future attempts to use my financial information would result in legal action. I hesitated before hitting send, but Megan squeezed my shoulder. "They need to know there are boundaries," she said quietly. The email sent with a soft whoosh, and an eerie calm settled over me. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up to my family's financial exploitation directly. "So what now?" Megan asked. "What are you going to do for Thanksgiving?" I hadn't thought that far ahead. The holiday was only a week away. Normally, I would be deep into planning, shopping, and preparing to host. "I don't know," I admitted. "I guess I could just stay home, order Chinese food, watch movies." "Or," Megan said with a gleam in her eye, "you could do something completely different. Something for yourself." The seed of an idea took root. What if I created my own Thanksgiving, not just for myself, but for others who might not have a place to go? "A misfit Thanksgiving," I said slowly, "for people who don't have family celebrations to attend." The idea energized me. I started making a list of people who might appreciate an invitation. Gary from accounting, whose children were spending the holiday with his ex-wife. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, who had mentioned her children lived out of state. Megan herself, who usually flew home but had canceled this year due to work commitments. I created simple digital invitations and began sending them out. To my surprise, responses came back almost immediately, most with enthusiastic acceptance. However, my small apartment wouldn't accommodate everyone. My colleague Patrick, who had finalized his divorce earlier that year, offered a solution. "I have that big house in the suburbs now with just me rattling around in it," he said when I explained my predicament. "We could host it there. I'd love to help." With the venue problem solved, I threw myself into planning. I created a menu featuring not just traditional Thanksgiving foods, but also dishes representing the diverse backgrounds of our guests. Each time I checked something off my list, I felt a little lighter, a little more in control. Between preparations, I called my grandfather, William, my father's father, who had been largely absent from family gatherings for years. I had always been told he was difficult and preferred to be alone, but I suddenly wondered if there was more to the story. "Ellen, what a pleasant surprise," he answered, his voice warm. When I asked if he had Thanksgiving plans, he chuckled softly. "No, nothing special. Your father and I don't exactly see eye to eye, as you know." "Would you like to come to my Thanksgiving?" he asked. "It's not with the family. I'm hosting some friends and colleagues." There was a pause. "Did something happen, Ellen?" I found myself telling him everything. To my surprise, his story mirrored mine in many ways. "They did the same thing to me years ago," he revealed. "When I stopped paying for their mistakes, I became the villain." It's a pattern in this family, I'm afraid. His validation meant more than I could express. We talked for nearly 2 hours, and for the first time, I understood why he had maintained his distance. It wasn't coldness, it was self-preservation. "I'd be honored to attend your Thanksgiving," he said before we hung up. "And Ellen, I'm proud of you for breaking the cycle." As I continued preparing for my alternative celebration, I found myself embracing the freedom of creating new traditions. There would be no walking on eggshells, no tense undercurrents of financial obligation, no silent treatments for perceived slights. Just people choosing to be together, grateful for the connection. Then, 3 days before Thanksgiving, I received a call from my bank's fraud department that changed everything again. They had been investigating the unauthorized charges and discovered something alarming. "Miss Sullivan, we found evidence of systematic unauthorized access to your accounts going back approximately 4 years, the fraud investigator explained. "Multiple credit lines have been opened in your name, and there have been regular transfers to accounts belonging to Judith and Frank Sullivan. My parents hadn't just stolen my card information for Thanksgiving. They had been stealing from me for years." The investigator continued, explaining that my identity had been used to open credit accounts I knew nothing about. The total amount stolen was staggering, nearly $70,000 over 4 years. This wasn't opportunistic theft. This was calculated, ongoing fraud committed by my own parents against their daughter, who had already given them so much voluntarily. "We strongly recommend you file a police report," the investigator advised. This is one of the more severe cases of familial identity theft we've seen. I thanked him numbly and hung up. The revelation left me shattered, but also strangely liberated. There was no more room for doubt. No way to rationalize or excuse their behavior. The decision about how to proceed was painfully clear. 3 days before Thanksgiving, my phone exploded with notifications. The first call came from my sister Amber at 6:15 in the morning. "What the hell did you do?" she demanded without preamble. The restaurant called and said our cards were declined. I was still groggy from a restless night processing the bank's revelations. "I canceled my cards after discovering the unauthorized charges," I said. "You knew we were using your card," Mom said. "You offered." "I absolutely did not," I said, now fully awake. "I didn't even know about the reservation until I saw the charge." "God, you're so petty," she snapped. "So we used your card without asking. It's not like you couldn't afford it. You're really going to ruin Thanksgiving over this? Amber, what you're describing is credit card fraud. It's a crime," she hung up on me. 10 minutes later, Mom called, leaving a vicious voicemail when I didn't answer. "You selfish, ungrateful child. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By embarrassing us? By ruining everyone's holiday? Your father is devastated. The whole family is talking about what a spiteful person you've become. I hope you're happy in that fancy apartment all alone on Thanksgiving." The irony of her calling me ungrateful while simultaneously being caught stealing from me was almost laughable. Almost. The calls continued throughout the morning. Dad, aunts, uncles, cousins. Each message expressed varying degrees of outrage at my pettiness and vindictiveness. Not once did anyone acknowledge the theft. Around noon, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Cody shifting nervously in the hallway. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "Ellen," he began, his tone placating, "we need to talk about this Thanksgiving situation." I let him in, but remained standing, arms crossed. "There's nothing to talk about. Mom and Dad used my credit card without permission." "Look, I get why you're upset," he said, pacing my living room. "But you don't understand what you've done. The harvest table won't hold the reservation without a new deposit today. Everyone's already made plans. Grandma Lucy is flying in from Arizona. That sounds like a problem for whoever made the reservation under false pretenses," I said flatly. His friendly demeanor vanished. "You think you're so perfect, don't you?" he sneered. "Just because you have a good job and don't screw up like the rest of us." "This isn't about who's perfect, Cody," I retorted. "It's about respecting boundaries." "Boundaries?" He scoffed. "We're family. There aren't supposed to be boundaries." "That's exactly the problem. You all think being family means unlimited access to my money." His expression darkened. "You know what? Mom was right about you. You've always thought you were better than us." He moved closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You have no idea what you've started. When the family finds out you're the reason Thanksgiving is canceled, no one will ever speak to you again." Then, as quickly as his anger had flared, it subsided, replaced by a pleading tone. "Please, Ellen, just this once. Pay for the dinner. I'll pay you back. I swear. Like you paid me back for the 2 previous DUI lawyers or the car I helped you buy that you totaled." He had no response to that. After he left, I received a text from my Aunt Tracy. "The harvest table just canceled the reservation completely. Your mother is having a meltdown. What's going on?" I briefly explained the situation, including the unauthorized use of my card. Her response surprised me. "I always wondered how they afforded that reservation. I'm so sorry, Ellen." That afternoon, my phone rang again. This time it was Amber, her voice thick with tears. "Mom told everyone you promised to pay for Thanksgiving," she sobbed. "Grandma Lucy is devastated. Aunt Patricia already bought her plane ticket. Everyone thinks you backed out at the last minute. That's a lie, and you know it," I said, keeping my voice steady. "No one even told me about the plans until I was explicitly uninvited." "Well, that's not what Mom's been telling people." "Of course not. The truth would make her look bad." There was a long pause. "Is it true?" Amber finally asked about the credit cards. "Yes, and apparently it's been going on for years." Another pause. "I didn't know that part," she admitted quietly. "Mom just said you had agreed to cover Thanksgiving as usual." For the first time, I heard a note of doubt in my sister's voice. The unwavering loyalty to our mother had always been Amber's defining characteristic. Even this small crack felt significant. Throughout the day, extended family members began reaching out directly. My cousin Sarah called to say she'd been uncomfortable with how I was being treated in the family group chat. My Uncle Dave texted asking for the real story. My Aunt Tracy called again, this time with an unexpected request. Ellen, I know this is presumptuous after everything that's happened, but I heard through Megan that you're hosting your own Thanksgiving. Would it be terribly inappropriate if I asked to join you instead? Your cousin Dylan would like to come too. I was taken aback. You want to come to my Thanksgiving? We've both been uncomfortable with how Judy and Frank have been treating you. The situation with the credit cards is the last straw for me. My brother needs to face consequences for once in his life. I felt conflicted. These were family members who had stood by while I was mocked and excluded, only to switch sides when their holiday plans collapsed. Yet the olive branch felt significant. Let me think about it, I promised. Before I could fully process the request, my work phone rang. It was my receptionist, her voice uncharacteristically nervous. Ellen, I'm so sorry to bother you, but your mother is here. She's making quite a scene in the lobby, demanding to see you. Security is asking what they should do. My blood ran cold. Tell them not to let her up. I'll be right down. When I reached the lobby, my mother was berating the security guard, her voice carrying across the marble floor. I have every right to see my daughter. This is ridiculous. Mom, I said, keeping my voice low. What are you doing here? She spun around, her face flushed with anger. Finally, tell this man to let me upstairs. We need to talk outside, I said, nodding apologetically to the guard. Once on the sidewalk, Mom launched into her tirade. You've gone too far this time, Ellen. Canceling the cards, reporting fraud, your own parents. You stole from me, I stated flatly. For years, apparently we borrowed, she retorted. That's what family does. No, Mom. Borrowing involves asking permission and paying back. Her eyes narrowed. You think you're so smart with your fancy job. Maybe your boss would be interested to hear about some of your family secrets. How about I tell him about the time you shoplifted in high school or your little anxiety problem in college? I stared at her, stunned by the blatant threat. Are you blackmailing me? I'm reminding you where your loyalties should lie. In that moment, looking at the stranger wearing my mother's face, something broke in me. Not in a way that hurt, but in a way that freed me. The last thread of obligation, familial duty, and desperate hope for approval snapped clean. I'm not paying for Thanksgiving, I said with perfect clarity. I'm not giving you any more money ever. And if you ever come to my workplace again or try to contact my colleagues, I will get a restraining order. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my mother's eyes. Not fear for me, but fear of me. Fear of the consequences I now represented. You don't mean that? She whispered. We're your family. Yes, I agreed. And that's what makes this so unforgivable. After the confrontation with my mother, I took a week off work. My boss was understanding, especially after I explained I was dealing with a family situation involving potential identity theft. I was vague on the details despite my mother's threats. No family secrets were revealed. With time away from work, I threw myself into Thanksgiving preparations. Patrick and I met at his spacious colonial in the suburbs to plan the menu and decorations. His kitchen was a chef's dream, with double ovens and a massive island perfect for preparing multiple dishes. I haven't been excited about a holiday in years, Patrick admitted as we made lists. Since the divorce, I've just been going through the motions. I know what you mean, I said. I've been so focused on meeting everyone else's expectations that I forgot holidays are supposed to be enjoyable. Our initial guest list of 6 or 7 had grown to 15. In addition to my colleagues and neighbors, Aunt Tracy and cousin Dylan had confirmed they would attend. My grandfather William would be coming. Megan had invited 2 friends who couldn't afford flights home. Patrick had included his elderly next-door neighbor and a cousin visiting from Seattle. It was a mismatched group of people connected by little more than their separation from traditional family celebrations, but somehow that made it feel more special. The Sunday before Thanksgiving, Grandpa William came over to share his recipes. At 82, he moved slowly, but his mind was sharp as ever. He brought a box of yellowed recipe cards written in my grandmother's handwriting. Martha's sweet potato casserole was legendary, he said, carefully laying out the cards on my kitchen counter, and her cranberry relish won the county fair 3 years running. As we went through the recipes, he shared stories I'd never heard about my father's childhood, about family gatherings long before I was born. There was a wistfulness in his voice, but also a steely resolve I recognized. Your grandmother and I tried for years to help your father become financially responsible, he revealed. We paid off his debts, co-signed loans, gave him chance after chance. Finally, when he was about 40, we had to stop. He stole your grandmother's jewelry when we refused to bail him out of another mess. He stole from you, too. I wasn't entirely surprised, but the confirmation was still painful. William nodded. The family sided with him, claimed, "We were heartless for not helping our son." That's when we stepped back from the bigger family gatherings. I always thought you just preferred to be alone. That's the story they told, he said with a sad smile. Easier than admitting their behavior drove us away. The parallel to my own situation was unmistakable. The cycle was repeating itself generation after generation. Later that afternoon, Aunt Tracy brought over old family photos she had digitized. We sat in my living room, scrolling through images spanning decades, Tracy pointing out patterns I had never noticed. See here, your father's graduation. My parents paid for the party. But look at the banner. It says hosted by Frank and Judy. They always took credit for others' generosity. Photo after photo told the same story. My parents at the center, always benefiting from others' resources while presenting themselves as the providers, the generous ones. I should have said something years ago, Tracy sighed, when I saw them doing the same thing to you, training you from childhood to be the responsible one. I just didn't want to cause problems. It's not your fault, I assured her. We all wanted to believe the best about them. As Thanksgiving approached, the guests for our gathering began connecting. I created a group chat for menu coordination, and people started sharing their own stories of family exclusion or holiday difficulties. Patrick's neighbor, Mrs. Winters, had been uninvited from her daughter's Thanksgiving after disagreeing with her son-in-law's politics. Gary from accounting had been excluded from his family celebration because his new boyfriend wasn't welcome. Megan's friend Tasha had grown up in foster care and never had a traditional family Thanksgiving at all. What started as a last-minute alternative plan was becoming something meaningful, a genuine community of people who understood what it meant to be on the outside. 2 days before Thanksgiving, I received a certified letter that sent a chill through me. My parents had consulted a lawyer who claimed I had made verbal commitments to financial support that constituted an implied contract. They were threatening to sue me for elder support based on the pattern of financial assistance I had established. I forwarded the letter to Jess immediately. Her response was both reassuring and infuriating. "This is a scare tactic," she explained over the phone. "There's no legal merit to their claim, especially given the evidence of identity theft. But it shows how desperate they've become now that their financial pipeline is cut off." "What should I do?" I asked. "Nothing for now. Let me handle any legal communications. Focus on your Thanksgiving." I tried to follow her advice, but the letter had shaken me. The audacity of threatening legal action against me after what they had done was almost incomprehensible. Yet at the same time, it was perfectly in character. They had always believed themselves entitled to whatever I had. The day before Thanksgiving, I baked pies at Patrick's house. The familiar, methodical process of mixing dough and preparing fillings calmed my nerves. Patrick worked alongside me, preparing vegetables for the next day and occasionally breaking into impulsive dance moves that made me laugh despite everything. "You know," he said as we worked, "I've been thinking about what makes a real family. It's not blood, it's not obligation, it's choice. Chosen family," I nodded. "That's what we're creating tomorrow." "Exactly. People who choose to support each other, not because they have to, but because they want to." The concept resonated deeply. All my life, I had been told that family loyalty meant enduring mistreatment, that love meant allowing myself to be used. What if the opposite was true? What if real love included boundaries, respect, and reciprocity? That evening, my phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. It was my cousin Sarah, who I hadn't spoken to in years. "Ellen, I heard what Aunt Judy and Uncle Frank did. I'm so sorry. Everyone's talking about it now, and a lot of us are on your side. The story about you backing out of paying is falling apart. I wish I could be at your Thanksgiving tomorrow instead of the disaster happening at Grandma Lucy's house. She's hosting now. Would love to reconnect soon. The message was a small vindication. The truth was emerging slowly but surely. My parents' version of events wasn't holding up to scrutiny. As I fell asleep that night, I felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. The family I had known was irreparably changed. The illusions I had maintained about our relationships were shattered. Yet something new was taking shape from the broken pieces. Something that might ultimately be healthier and more genuine than what had been lost. Thanksgiving morning dawned clear and cold. I had stayed overnight at Patrick's house to get an early start on cooking. By 6:30, I was elbow deep in stuffing preparation when I realized my phone was buzzing repeatedly from my purse. When I finally checked, I was stunned to see 25 missed calls accumulated overnight after I had turned off silent mode. The voicemails ranged from pleading to threatening. Mom. Ellen. This has gone far enough. The family is in chaos. You need to fix this. Dad. Pumpkin, whatever's bothering you, we can work it out. Call me back. Amber. You've made your point. Everyone's miserable. Are you happy now, Cody? You think you're so much better than everyone. Watch your back. Aunt Patricia, I flew all the way from Arizona for this disaster. Thanks for nothing. The messages continued, each one demonstrating that despite everything, they still expected me to solve their problems. No one acknowledged the theft or the years of manipulation. In their minds, I was still the unreasonable one who needed to come around. I showed the messages to Patrick, who looked increasingly concerned. Should we be worried about them showing up here? They don't know where you live, I assured him, though a flicker of unease passed through me. We continued our preparations as guests were expected at 2. Grandpa William arrived first, bringing a bottle of fine scotch in his warm presence. Mrs. Jenkins came next, bearing homemade rolls that filled the house with a yeasty aroma. One by one, our misfit gathering assembled, each person adding something to the celebration. By 1:30, the house hummed with conversation and laughter. I was in the kitchen basting the turkey when Patrick appeared at my side, his expression tense. Ellen, your family is here. My heart dropped. What? How did they find us? I don't know, but they're at the front door. Your mother, father, sister, and brother. I wiped my hands on a towel, straightened my shoulders, and walked to the entryway. Through the sidelight windows, I could see them huddled on the porch. Mom at the front, of course, with Dad looking uncomfortable behind her, Amber shifting from foot to foot, Cody with his arms crossed defensively. I opened the door but remained in the threshold, blocking their entry. What are you doing here? We've come for Thanksgiving, Mom announced, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Since our plans fell through, we thought we'd join yours. The audacity was breathtaking. You banned me from your Thanksgiving. Remember? You're banned, idiot! Those were your exact words. Oh, that was just a little family spat. You know how these things go. Behind me, I could sense our guests growing quiet, listening to the confrontation unfolding. How did you find this address? I asked. Mom waved her hand dismissively. And Tracy told us when we called her this morning. She mentioned she was coming here. I made a mental note to be more careful with information in the future, even with relatives who seemed supportive. Well, I'm sorry you came all this way, but you're not welcome here, I said. Ellen. My father stepped forward, his face reddening. That's no way to talk to your mother. Actually, it's exactly how to talk to someone who stole my identity, used my credit cards without permission, and then threatened to blackmail me at my workplace. His face fell. He hadn't known about the workplace incident, apparently. Amber pushed forward. We're family, Ellen. You can't just cut us off over money. This isn't about money, I said, my voice steady. It's about respect. It's about boundaries, none of which any of you seem to understand. So, you'll let Aunt Tracy in, but not your own mother? Mom's voice rose. After all I've sacrificed for you. I almost laughed. What exactly have you sacrificed for me, Mom? I've been supporting this family financially since I was a teenager. I gave you life, and that doesn't entitle you to steal from me for the rest of it. By now, guests had begun to gather in the hallway behind me. Patrick stood closest, a solid presence at my back. Grandpa William stepped forward to stand beside me. Judy, Frank, he acknowledged with a curt nod. This is a private gathering. You weren't invited. My father? My father said, clearly surprised to see his estranged father. You're here? I am by invitation, Grandpa William replied. So you'll side with Ellen against your own son? I'm siding with decency and honesty, my grandfather replied calmly. Something you might want to try sometime. The tension was palpable. Other guests began to step outside, creating an impromptu barrier between my family and the door. Listen, I said, trying one last time to reason with them. What you've done is serious. Identity theft, credit card fraud, blackmail. These are crimes. I have every right to press charges. For the first time, fear flashed across my mother's face. You wouldn't do that to your own parents. I don't want to, I said. But you need to understand that things have changed. I'm not your personal bank anymore. I'm not the family fixer. If you want a relationship with me going forward, it has to be built on mutual respect. You ungrateful little... my mother began, but my father cut her off with a hand on her arm. Judy, stop. He looked tired suddenly, older than his years. Ellen, we've made mistakes. The credit cards. It started small. A bill here and there when we were short, then it got easier. No, Judy, she's right. We crossed lines. He turned back to me. The truth is, we're in trouble. Deep trouble. The house is 3 months behind on payments. Cody's legal bills keep piling up. We thought you'd bail us out like you always do. The raw honesty was unexpected. For a moment, I felt the familiar pull of responsibility, the ingrained need to solve their problems. I can't fix this for you, I said gently. I can give you information about financial counseling, legal aid for Cody, but I can't give you money anymore. It hasn't helped. It's only enabled destructive patterns. So that's it? Amber's voice cracked. You're just cutting us off? I'm establishing boundaries, I replied, my voice steady. Whether that means cutting you off depends on whether you can respect those boundaries. Mom's face hardened again. Come on, everyone. We're not going to beg. She turned and stalked toward their car, Dad following reluctantly. Cody lingered, leaning close to whisper, This isn't over, Ellen. You think you can humiliate us like this? Wait and see what happens. As they drove away, Amber threw something onto the lawn. Looking closer, I realized it was a box containing mementos from my childhood. My macaroni art from kindergarten, school awards, the stuffed bear I'd loved as a child. They had brought my keepsakes just to throw them away in anger. The guests helped me collect the scattered items, treating each piece with a gentleness that brought tears to my eyes. We returned inside where the warmth and food waited, but I couldn't shake a sense of unease about Cody's parting threat. The meal began with a moment of silent gratitude. Despite the dramatic confrontation, or perhaps because of it, there was a palpable feeling of solidarity among our gathered guests. People shared stories, both painful and hopeful, about family estrangements and new beginnings. Patrick gave me an encouraging smile from across the table. Grandpa William patted my hand. Aunt Tracy, though clearly shaken by the encounter with her brother and sister-in-law, assured me I had done the right thing. We were midway through dessert when my phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor Jeff. Ellen, there are people at your apartment. They look like they're trying to get in. Should I call the police? Attached was a photo showing my parents' car parked in front of my building and Cody attempting to jimmy my apartment door. They're breaking into my apartment, I announced, showing the text to the table. Patrick immediately stood up. I'll drive you there. No, I said firmly. I'm calling the police. It was the hardest call I'd ever made, but the evidence was right there on my phone. My family was attempting to burglarize my home after being denied financial support. The responding officers arrived before we could even leave Patrick's house, catching my parents and siblings in the act. I asked Jeff to stay on site as my representative, not ready to face my family again so soon. The police called an hour later to inform me that Cody, Mom, and Dad had been taken into custody. Amber had been present but hadn't actively participated in the break-in, so she was released with a warning. They claimed they were just retrieving their own property, the officer explained, but without keys or permission. That's still breaking and entering. I closed my eyes, imagining the scene. My parents in a police car, my brother in handcuffs. It was surreal and heartbreaking, but also the natural conclusion to years of escalating entitlement and boundary violations. Would you like to press charges, Miss Sullivan? The officer asked. After a long moment, I answered, Yes, for the break-in and for the identity theft. I'll come to the station tomorrow to provide all the evidence. There was no joy in the decision, only a somber recognition that without consequences, nothing would change. This wasn't vengeance. It was the only path to potential healing. Despite the family drama, we returned to the Thanksgiving gathering, determined not to let it overshadow the community we had created. The dinner continued, though with a more subdued tone. As people began to help with cleanup, I tapped my glass for attention. "I want to thank you all for being here today," I began, my voice trembling slightly. This hasn't been the easiest Thanksgiving. Obviously, looking around this table, I see something more valuable than what I lost. I see people who choose to support each other, who respect boundaries, who understand that real family isn't about obligation or blood, but about genuine care. Glasses were raised all around the table. "To chosen family," Patrick added. "To chosen family," everyone echoed. After dessert, as guests began to depart with leftovers and warm hugs, Aunt Tracy pulled me aside for a private conversation. "I need to apologize," she said, her eyes downcast. "I've watched how they treated you for years and said nothing. I convinced myself it wasn't my place to interfere. You're here now," I said. "That means a lot. There's something else you should know." She hesitated. "This pattern goes back generations in our family. My parents did it to William and Martha. Frank and Judy did it to you. There's always one child designated as the responsible one, the provider, while the others are enabled in their worst behaviors. Why are you telling me this?" "Because someone needs to break the cycle," she said simply. "And you're strong enough to do it." In the days that followed, I worked with Jess to establish clear legal and financial boundaries. My parents and Cody were charged with attempted breaking and entering and identity theft. Given the family relationship and their lack of prior criminal records, they were offered a plea deal that included probation, mandatory financial counseling, and restitution payments. The extended family's reaction was mixed. Some relatives cut contact with me entirely, unable to accept that I had involved the legal system in a family matter. Others, like Aunt Tracy and several cousins, expressed support for my decision to finally establish boundaries. Amber, perhaps the biggest surprise, reached out a month after Thanksgiving with a tentative olive branch. "I'm not saying what they did was right," she said during an awkward coffee meeting. I just don't know how to be in the middle of all this." "You don't have to be in the middle," I told her. "You just need to respect the boundaries I've set." She nodded slowly. "I think I can do that." 6 months later, on Memorial Day weekend, I hosted another gathering of my chosen family. The group had evolved somewhat since Thanksgiving. Some connections had deepened, others had naturally drifted. Patrick and I had grown particularly close, our friendship blossoming into something more. During the spring, Aunt Tracy came again, this time bringing cousin Sarah, who had reached out after Thanksgiving. My grandfather William was there, noticeably more energetic than he'd been months earlier, as if the reconciliation of certain truths had revitalized him. As we gathered around Patrick's backyard grill, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey of the past 6 months. My parents and Cody were still working through their probation requirements and attending court-mandated financial counseling. We had minimal contact, limited to necessary legal communications. According to Aunt Tracy, they were beginning to acknowledge their patterns, though true accountability remained elusive. Dad had found steady work for the first time in years. Mom had downsized many of her luxury spending habits. Cody had entered a substance abuse program after his 3rd DUI finally resulted in jail time. Whether these changes would last or whether reconciliation would ever be possible remained to be seen. I had learned to hold space for both possibilities. That my family of origin might someday become people I could safely welcome back into my life, or that our paths had permanently diverged. What I knew with certainty was that I had found peace with my decisions. The boundaries I had established had created space for healthier relationships to flourish. The financial burden I had carried for so long had lifted, allowing me to build my own security and future. As the evening wound down, I checked my phone out of habit and found a text message that stopped me in my tracks. From my mother's number, it contained just 2 words. "I'm sorry. No excuses, no justifications, no demands. Just the simple acknowledgement I had never expected to receive." I showed the message to Patrick, who squeezed my hand. "A beginning. Maybe," I agreed cautiously. "A very small one." Whether those two words represented a genuine turning point or merely another manipulation remained to be seen. But for the first time, I faced the uncertainty without anxiety. I had built a life rich with authentic connections. I had broken the cycle of obligation and exploitation that had defined my family for generations. I had learned that saying no to abuse could mean saying yes to genuine love and support. The setting sun cast a golden glow over our gathering, over the faces of people who had chosen to be in each other's lives. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the painful Thanksgiving that had forced me to draw a line, stand my ground, and discover what family could truly mean. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to establish boundaries with family members? What helped you find the strength to stand firm? I'd love to read your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength through difficult family situations, and share with someone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most healing paths forward.